to Window to Haiti. It is a journey to the heart of the people. Today, I am honored to have a giant in the Haitian media industry that has paved the way from his time in the New York Times all the way now to the Haitian Times now. And I'm honored to have Gary PIERRE-PIERRE with us. Welcome to the Window to Haiti.
Thank you, David.
All right. So usually I would start and as our guests introduce themselves. Tell our audience who you are, who your parents are, and everything.
Okay, well, my name is Gary PIERRE-PIERRE. It's a pleasure to be here. I was born in Haiti. I came to the United States and settled in New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. I was about 11 years old. Grew up there. I went to high school. And then after high school, I came down to Florida. I went to Florida A&M in Tallahassee. Spent 4 wonderful years in Tallahassee. And after college, joined the Peace Corps. I was in West Africa, Togo and Benin, and which was really interesting for me because this is where the majority of Haitians came from. Dahomey, which is Benin.
Okay, yes.
And it was sort of like reminded me a lot of my childhood memories of Haiti when I was in West Africa. And so after that experience, I came back to Florida, worked as a journalist at the Lakeland Ledger. Then I got recruited by the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale. Then after a couple of years there, covering a bunch of things about the Haitian community and other communities, the New York Times recruited me, and I spent 6 years at the New York Times. And then by the 1990s, late 90s, there was a transformation going on in the Haitian community. And my parents, when they came here in the 90s, it was with the idea that they were going to go back to Haiti because, they loved Haiti. New York was very cold, a very different place. And the dream was to go back to Haiti. We were like an exile group. But by the 90s, I realized my mom and dad, they were still in the United States. And my generation was emerging. And nobody was going back to Haiti. Nobody had gone back to Haiti, and we're here. And then at the New York Times, I would occasionally write some stories about the Haitian community, and people really, really appreciated it because it was for the first time the New York Times was writing about the Haitian community or Haiti from somebody who was a Haitian American. And so I thought, this was a moment to do something totally radical. Leave the New York Times and start a paper for the Haitian community. Because my generation didn't have any media targeting it. Because all the media outlets that were there were radio or newspapers in French and Creole. But my generation, for the most part, didn't read Creole at the time. And certainly didn't read French or understood it very well. We were Anglophones.
Okay, yes.
So I decided to do a newspaper for that generation. Hence was born the Haitian Times. But critics just slammed it, like a newspaper for Haitians in English. In fact, there was a famous French journalist based in Paris. He came to the US and he heard about the Haitian Times. And he did a story because he was so counterintuitive. Like, who is this guy? He's nuts. Why would a paper for Haitians in English work? But what they didn't understand that there was a transformation. We were evolving, and we would be English first community. And I could see it because I was me. I spoke French and Creole because of my years in Africa and Creole covering Haiti. That's when I really reconnected with those languages. But most of my friends who were in that media, and none of them were at the time. They didn't speak French well, if at all, and Creole the same thing. And so I knew if they had the issue, what about the next generation, and so on and so forth. So I think that there was a need for publications like that. And I, courageously having just decided to leave one of the most prestigious jobs in journalism and started the Haitian Times.
Wow. And you've unpacked a lot because you've lived a lot, experienced a lot, and I'm glad for that. But before we move forward with this interview, I want to give credit to where we are now. We are at the Avancel summit hosted by Avancel called PIERRE-PIERRE. We're still here. And I want to say thank you to Sandra Dennis, who is the founder and CEO of Avancel. So, and then earlier we were having a conversation about immigrations and things like that. And one of the things I wanted to ask is, you mentioned you came here in the 90s, in the 70s. Where were your parents from in Haiti?
Well, my mom was born in Miragouane in the south.
Okay.
My father actually was born in Port-au-Prince.
Okay.
Yes. The PIERRE-PIERREs are one of the original settlers of Bel Air. So that's where, you know, I'm like, something like Bel Air.
Stop.
So, yes, so that's where my parents are from. And I know Bel Air very well until things fell apart in Haiti. But I've been to Miragouane because, as you know, Haitian parents always want to make sure that you know where you came from and that, you know, there's that connection. And in fact, about a decade ago or so, I went to Miragouane and I randomly walked into a store and I saw the lady and I asked her about my family. She's like, oh, what's that? So they knew who my family was. And so one of the things that I want to do, I want to pass that tradition on to my children. So I've been meaning to take them back to Miragouane. But unfortunately, the last few years, I haven't been right for me to do so. But the sooner that I can make that pilgrimage,
yes,
I will make it.
Now, how did you feel going back in Miragouane and having that conversation with that person that still remember the family? Talk to me about the experience.
Well, I felt a connection. I felt like I had a heritage. There was a lineage. This land, you know, that's where I came from. And I had that similar experience in Benin, in Dahomey, because when I was in Africa, traveling, you know, Africans have this thing when they see you at airports or whatever, where are you from? They want to know what country you're from.
Yes.
And everyone always guessed that I was from Benin. And even the Beninois thought I was from Benin. And at times, I would be at a bar, restaurant, hanging out, and people will start talking to me in Fon, which was the local language. Of course, in the Peace Corps, they teach you some. I mean, I know enough to say "sak passe," and then after that, comment ye, and then you know that's it. And I would then revert to French, and the Beninese would say, "Nos frères là, quand ils vont en France, ils reviennent chez eux, ils veulent pas parler leur langue locale." So they thought I was a sellout. so much more that, as far as they was concerned, this guy's a Beninois.
Yes.
And so it was,
and he's not speaking the native language. He's speaking in French. Yeah.
And so it was, and I'm telling them, I said, look, I have not a Beninois. I'm American, but I'm from Haiti. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like,
that's Pape D. You know,
exactly. So I tell people, you know, I went to Africa and I discovered who I am. Because, you know, like we were talking about identity, I always never wanted to be an American. When I was a kid, I was a Haitian. And, I was like,
through and through.
Exactly. And even though I was a young kid when I came here, and then I was in Africa, and then I had moved to Togo next door. My program had shut down in Benin. I went to Togo and befriended Bruno. I still remember his name. He was from Zaire and out of Congo. And, you know, we used to talk a lot about Africa, Pan-Africanism. And then one day, I made a comment. To me, it was just like something, you know, banal. I said, man, I wish I could have some pizza. And Bruno looked at me and he smiled. And Bruno said, Gary, you're an American. And I said, why did you say that? He said, only an American would say he missed pizza. And then I laughed, I said, oh, you're right. And then at that point, I realized I understood my identity. I'm an American of Haitian ancestry. And I don't have, there's no conflict. I don't have to fight one or the other. Embrace both because that's what makes me unique. And then when I came back to America, there was no sense of identity crisis, if you will. I was an American of Haitian ancestry. I love pizza, I love griot.
Yes. And then we don't have to have conflict between both.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, talk to me about from your time, like after your time in the Peace Corps in Benin. Now you move back you're back home to the U.S. How was that coming back? Because there was I asked that because earlier in the panel you said you somewhat missed the moment where Haitian was somewhat discriminated against.
Yes, I did kind of. Well, although I was in college. In college is a different environment. I mean, most of that happened when I was at Florida A&M, as I mentioned, at FAMU. And then left, went to Togo, I've just talked about it. Came back. And it's interesting because when I went to the Peace Corps, really full of African and Pan-African zeal, I met a white woman and I fell in love with her. And I came back. It was difficult to ponder the idea of marrying a white woman because in 1989 when I got married, that was very tough kind of lifestyle to be in a interracial relationship. So that was tough.
Okay.
But, I decided, listen, you fall in love with someone and just as if, I don't want to be a racist in reverse, saying that I'm not going to marry you because you're white. And so how would I feel if somebody said they're not going to marry me because I'm black? So I was like, you know what? You can't, if you're against discrimination one way, it can work another way.
Yes.
And so I did. So I got married, moved back to Florida, went to Lakeland. And that was tough. Lakeland in 1989 and 90. And an interracial relationship was not ideal. Thank God I didn't stay there very long. I was there for like a few months and came to Fort Lauderdale. And that wasn't great either. So it was a tough transition in terms of being in America. Having been away for a couple years, I missed the George Bush presidency, the first George Bush.
Okay.
And then, but eventually you settle back into your own routine, which I did. Then I went back to New York, and I found my groove.
Before we're getting to New York, because there are so many things you're saying that I want to dig the up on.
Okay, I'll let you conduct the interview.
No. But what you're saying is fascinating, and I want to give credit to your journey too, not skipping anything. Okay. Now, tell me that moment, or recount that moment where you meet the person that will be your wife. How was that?
Well, it's funny because when we met, it was just a friendship, and then we developed a romantic relationship. And then at one point I told her, I said, I don't think I really want to take this further because I'm not ready to get into this type of relationship. These are really complicated stuff, and I don't want to deal with it. And we were talking, I was a very intellectual person. I read a lot of Malcolm X at FAMU. It was a bastion of black identity. And she was like, yeah, I understood. And at some point I was like, who are you? Because she made me feel so comfortable, and it's like looking for ways to sort of get out of this relationship. And then, she had a health emergency. She went back to her home in Indiana, and I came back and then went to visit her, and we eventually got married. And then I met her parents.
I was getting there, but glad you could go there. Okay.
Then I understood her.
Okay.
Her parents were like, people who are humanist. They raised them to respect and love people.
Wow.
And so that's what she was. And then they embraced me, even before we got married, and they made me feel comfortable. And I said, you know what? If I'm comfortable in their home, in that environment, then I don't care about other people, because the affirmation that I needed was there. Okay. And I know my parents, they had no issues. You know, Haitians, we're not that dogged against sort of like us, you know, marrying non-Haitians. Yeah. And so that was fine on my end. And so when I realized that her parents were fine. In fact, it was something that when we were together in Africa, she wrote her brother, a younger brother, she said, ask her parents, her mom, how would she feel if she was with a black person? And her mom was insulted at that question.
Wow.
She said, what do you think?
I wish you better.
You think that I would have a problem with that. And so I would learn of that later. And so that kind of environment, I felt, then I could really deal with whatever it was to come. And a lot did.
But earlier you mentioned Lakeland was a bit difficult. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, Lakeland, I mean, it's not the most. It was a racist place. I mean, let me not sugarcoat it. And I don't know. I haven't been there since I left in '90, and it's been a long time. I don't know what it is today, but back then it was not the most open environment,
especially to. Mixed couple.
Exactly. And then we were professionals. And so they were used to farm workers and sort of like working class blacks, because at the time there were no other minorities to speak of in Lakeland. It was black or white. And by the way, there was an emerging Haitian community back then.
Okay.
They were mostly migrant workers. I did some stories about them. But they were used to that, but not in a professional. So going to a restaurant, place like that, there were not too many blacks going to work in a restaurant. And on top of it, you have a white woman with you. It was just like kind of like unusual kind of environment.
Okay. And then now you said you moved to New York.
Well, no, after Lakeland, I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. And where did you start your story as a writer? And then how did that begin?
Well, since I was in high school, I worked at the newspaper in the high school. My interest in journalism was kind of interesting. I remember as a kid, my parents and their friends were talking about these journalists that Duvalier, Jean-Claude, had exiled. It was Jean-Dominique and then his wife, I don't know if they were married then, Liliane Pierre-Paul, who just passed away, and Kaplume, Evans Paul, and Compère Philo.
And then the founder of Haiti, Dominique.
Jean-Dominique, yes. So they were talking about how, because the work that they were doing upset a president so much that they kicked him out. And I thought to myself as a kid, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool that you do something that you can upset powerful people and that they will kick you out of the country. And I got fascinated by journalism because of that. But then I love photography.
Okay.
So I studied, as I was a photographer, I loved it. I mean, I got a job in high school so I could buy a camera and equipment. And when I went to college, I didn't study journalism, I studied history. But I worked at the FAMU newspaper, and I was a photo editor. One day, we were on deadline. The editor asked me to write, but we didn't have an editorial for that week's publication. They asked me to write the editorial, and I wrote it. And this is really good. And then I started writing it since. Then when I became a professional, I decided, you know what? There are more jobs as reporters than photographers. So I'm going to pursue writing. Okay. So that's how I started writing, and I put the photography in the back burner. But it remains to this day one of my first love. I published a book in 2010 about the earthquake in Haiti, a book of photography. And I'm working on a book that's going to publish in 2024. It's a book that I spent 5 years photographing voodoo ceremony and Canada, of all places, and having inside access to it.
Wow.
And so I'm going to be publishing it this year for the 25th anniversary of the Haitian Times.
Nice. Now, before we get to New York Times, I feel like I want to open a little window to, Sense.
Yes.
So, you got that job Tell me about the time in the moment where you were right there before we get to.
Well, I got to Sun Sentinel in May 1990. At the time, the community in South Florida was growing by leaps and bounds. It went from like a small group of elites that came, and then with the boat people phenomena hadn't really exploded. It was coming.
It was coming.
It was coming slowly, and then by the 1990, it was on the eve of the elections in Haiti that ushered in Aristide.
Yes.
So there was a lot of optimism that things were going to change in Haiti. And so it was within that context, I started there and started writing the story of the community. And then a coup happened a few months later. Then I was thrown into the story in Haiti. And then I did some of that, but in Fort Lauderdale itself, I covered when I'm not doing Haiti, I was covering Margate, West Broward communities, which at the time, they were predominantly white. And now I understand it's very diverse and largely Haitian communities. But back then, they were white communities. So I cover that and some other things that I did there. But at the Sun Sentinel, it was interesting because in South Florida, Haiti is a local story. I mean, because of the community. This is the Herald covered it. And so the New York Times started seeing my stories on the wires. It was before the internet.
They call it wires.
Yeah, newspaper had wires where you see other papers. And then they started seeing my stories. And I was at the convention of the National Association of Black Journalists. And at the time, I was trying to get back to New York because my mom was sick. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And I wanted to be closer to her. I was an only child.
Okay, wow.
And I just wanted to be in New York. But I never thought that I would get hired at the New York Times because I was not something that I was a young reporter. And so I wasn't even thinking about the New York Times. There was the other Newsday was a paper that I thought would hire me, but they turned me down. And so I said, okay, maybe I'll leave journalism, move back to New York, do something else. And so I went to the conference and I was in this job fair that they have at the Black Journalists Association. And I saw a banner that says New York Times, and I looked down, there was a African-American man sitting there, and I gave him my resume and the clips. Usually at these things, they don't read your clips. They look at the resume and ask you a few questions, and it's very superficial at best. But this time he kept reading my stories, and he was reading them.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, what's wrong with this picture here? And then, a few minutes later, longer than most people would, he looked at me, he said, how did you learn how to write this well? And being quick, I said, I read a lot and I have good editors. And he said, how would you like to work for better editors? And I said, okay. And he gave me an invitation to a reception that the New York Times was doing. Now, mind you, the New York Times reception was legendary at these conventions because, they had the best food, the best liquor. It was, first class thing. And so I walked there and I realized it was not just a simple invitation. It was really an interview. They wanted to see me in a social setting. How do I comport myself? How do I carry myself? And then next thing they were passing me on from one person to another. And then I was being interviewed. And then, I came back to Fort Lauderdale. Then I got a call from an assistant, and then they flew me up to New York. I think first time I flew first class. They flew me first class to New York for the interview, and then ultimately I ended up getting hired.
Wow. Again, it's one of those interviews like you get deep into it, so like you want to know more. Promise, we're gonna keep moving forward,
okay.
but I want to dig deeper in the immigration story, like when people were starting to come in boat, like how do you think those stories were being reported back then with the people coming in boat to now with the people we call the Biden people how those stories are being reported? What's the difference and some similarities do you see?
Well, back then, I think the community was not as engaged, as active. But at the same time, I was here as a reporter, and then the Herald had Marjorie Valbrun. We were both Haitian Americans from New York. And then we were writing it from an empathetic perspective because it was a story of a group of people who were maligned. And so I think that was the angle, at least from my perspective, from what I remember, my stories looked at it from a very, how should I say it, a very sympathetic. You know, like, you know, they were being, some people were taking the quorum. You heard earlier, Wilkin said his parents, which was at quorum. I covered quorum. There were a lot of protests. The treatments, there were a lot of mistreatments.
Before I go, tell me, for people that don't know what quorum is.
Quorum was a detention center that, you know, when Haitians, both people would arrive, they would take them, arrest them as if they were criminals, and take them to quorum. It's a jail. Sometimes they would spend months there, not being released. And there was the story about the food. They had, I remember one story, they had some kind of chemical in the stories that would enlarge the breast of the men. So men would have breasts after eating the food. And so we would story about that. There was a lot of abuse by the authorities of the Haitians coming here. They were not welcome. In fact, there were stories about, there was Cuban migration here at the time, at the same, so there was many stories like this. A Haitian boat coming over will encounter a boat of Cubans that were in danger. So the Haitians will bring the Cubans on board. When they would get to shore, the Cubans were welcomed as heroes, and the Haitians were imprisoned, were jailed. And so there was a lot of stories like that about, you know, the unfairness.
It's like the wet food, dry food.
Yes, exactly. That's where it started. So the Cubans had special privileges and we didn't. And so, you know, that was a coverage of the story. Right now, there's, I would say, less of that abuse, if you will, authoritarian abuse that existed. And it's a more nuanced story. Now you talk about the differences among the immigrant groups that are here. You talk about Mumbai Denyo, Munshilio, and there's a whole sort of weight. But I don't think the mainstream media is really talking about that because they don't understand it. Because that's inside differences that is not being seeped out into the mainstream media. Because the Miami Herald has Jackie Charles and Wilkin at Gucci's at WLRN and PR. They do some of the stories, but there's the appetite for the Haiti story is not the same as it was back in the 90s, early 90s particularly. And up until the aughts, really, because the Haiti story was still huge to our, in South Florida, it still remains important, but nationally not. So the national media has moved on from that story a while ago. So I would say that's the difference where, you know, the Haiti story back then it was a national story and also international story. You had the magazines, Newsweek, Time, the Guardian in England, and Paris Match, and Le Figaro, and France, and Le Monde, and even some Italians and some other international press really covered the Haiti story now, or Haitian stories. It's not the same. But we have our own, the Haitian Times. Yeah. We do cover the story.
Yeah, and then that's where we're going now. You know, and then before we go there, so I want to say, put in context, like back then, Ukraine is the way Ukraine is now, the way Israel is now, and the way Iraq used to be. So that's why that's how Haiti was used to be in the news as a national or international news country.
Yeah, that was a big story. That was a front page story, we call it. And I had front seat to the front page story. I mean, it's something where, you know, everything that I would write would be on the front page.
Wow.
Because it was important, because Bill Clinton was president, and he really put a stake on the ground on his foreign policy. Because people don't remember, Bill Clinton didn't have any foreign policy experience. He was governor of Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
So that was one of his knocks against him, that he lacked foreign policy chops. And so for him to stake that reputation on Haiti was a big deal.
Then now, talk to us now the Haitian time, you know, because of the lack of understanding or the lack of coverage in all the newspaper or on media. Tell us the importance of the Haitian time in today's news and information.
Well, you know, in 1999, when I started the Haitian Times, I knew that the community was going to evolve, right? It's inevitable, because we were coming, we were going to continue to come. And I felt that we needed a publication to talk about that journey, to frame the narrative, and you know, not from a sort of like propaganda standpoint, to tell our stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to challenge people who want to do harm to our community, because you have a lot of bad actors.
Okay.
So that was the role of the Haitian Times, the vision that I had for it, so that we write stories that connect the future generations with the older generations. Hence our motto, bridging the gap. Because there's always going to be a gap. We see it now. Mun Biden, mun Chile, mun Miami, mun New York.
The dreamers.
Yeah, exactly. Mun CPS. So I knew this was going to happen. But we needed some kind of connector. And I wanted the Haitian Times to be that connector. Okay. And 25 years later, as we are approaching our 25th year anniversary, I noticed that now we have migration out of New York and South Florida, because they were the original hub. And then we had Boston, which was sort of like their little intellectual thing, Harvard, MIT kind of thing. They were in New York, we were in Miami, obviously there was no Harvard here. We were both people, and you know, trying to be part of Americans' fabric. But now you have Haitians moving to Indianapolis. Atlanta has a huge community.
And Washington State as well.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon, everywhere. I mean, I have a database. You have Haitians in every state, including Alaska and Hawaii. And it's significant numbers.
Wow.
And Columbus, Ohio. You know, and Detroit, Michigan. Iowa City, Iowa. You name it. I mean, I can go on and on. But you have 10 big centers. You know, now Philadelphia, Maryland, Delaware, those are emerging communities. And with the new people coming, you know,
Atlanta.
Back then, we came to New York. And then after that, people in New York say, oh, it's so cold up there. Then we move to Miami. And then now, people are coming, they don't care. The Biden people, the people from Chile.
Illinois, Chicago,
they're fine with the cold, because it was cold in Chile too. So they're used to the cold. So there's a different mindset. They're not weak as we were back then, just like, oh, it's too cold in New York, we gotta go to Miami. But now you have people leaving Miami in New York because it's too expensive.
Too expensive, yes.
I mean, you know, nobody can afford New York anymore. Okay. In South Florida, the same thing. And so people are not even coming there, because you have communities in these other places that they can, you know, join and find a better job. Yeah. Because jobs are plentiful in the Midwest, okay? And the cost of living is not as high.
Yes.
And so that's where we're heading now. And the Haitian Times wants to be part of that migration and chronicle it, let people know. So 20 years from now, 25 years, 30 years from now, that there's a record of that migration.
Yes.
Academics, scholars, journalists can know this is our community. Okay. The Haitian Times can be that resources.
Yes.
We are in the process now of digitizing print editions. We have 15 years of print editions that we need to get online so that, you know, it make them available for folks to have access to. Because it tells you the history from 1999 until we went digital exclusively.
But also, and I do have a chance to, I follow Haitian Times on all the social media, and I do, when those stories come, it speaks to the professionalism and also the how, it's like you kind of take your experience from, and also from the New York Times as far as like, hey, the high pressure, because it was a good pressure, because like on excellence and making sure you do the work right, but also you cannot now doing that in the Haitian time. And I couldn't be more proud and respectful for the work you've done for all of your years, from the Sun Sentinel, the Times in Miami, Haitian Times now. Now, one question I didn't have a chance to ask you in the panel, and I think toward the end of we were trying to wrap up, was what are the roles that we can play in shaping the trajectories and experiences of Haitian diaspora's members in their respective host countries?
Well, before I answer the question, is that I want to say that the Haitian Times, although I was a founder and sort of like the face of it, it has a great team. What I'm proud of is that I'm able to train the future leaders of the Haitian Times, and they're now in place. And so it's not, when I pull back, and I'm slowly doing that, I can promise you that it will not lose much, because I've been making sure that there's a Haitian Times after I'm no longer the face of it. I think right now, what the community needs, okay, is serious organizations, serious institutions. Now we need to build a community seriously. We were just getting here. From the 1990s, we were just here, just being here, just being here. Now we need real institutions.
Yes.
And I could say this publicly. I don't know if she'll get upset. She won't get upset because I know she.
You mean what?
Yeah. I pull Central Denny aside. She's the founder of Ayiti and some. She was talking earlier during the day about how basically this is a labor of love for her. This is, a hobby. I pull her aside. No. Ayiti and some should be an organization. That's where your heart is. That's where your passion is. That's what you need to do. That's what the community needs. Whatever job you have, find a way to make Ayiti and some be your job, because the community needs it now.
Yes.
And she looked at me and said, "You speaking from experience?" I said, "Yes." Because she realized now the Haitian Times is a professional media outlet. It's not Gary's dream. Because for it to go beyond Gary's dream, it has to be professional.
Yes.
Because the community, you need a Haitian Times that's professional, that's able to pay people to work there.
Yes, important.
And so that's where we are now. That's a crossroad we are now. We need businesses. We need to really put the ensemble on Ayiti ensemble to work.
Yes.
That we have to really be together. I've been in Miami for the last couple of days. Every night I had Haitian food. I did something Haitian. I have to. I need to support, because if I'm the founder and publisher of the Haitian Times, I need to support some things Haitian. And we need to support each other. And we need to support each other, but at the same time, demanding quality. I will support you, but you have to start upping your game. If I walk into a restaurant,
customer service.
Gaideo? No. Hi, how are you?
Yes.
Welcome. These are things that we experience here.
Yes.
So let's emulate the good in this country.
Yes.
Okay? Give service. Give good service. Be professional. Then that way, give people a reason to support you. And provide service. I think, I heard some criticism earlier about the elected officials. I think, and that was unfortunate, because elected officials are there to serve the community. And it seems like they've adopted the Haitian mindset of like, if I'm the politician, if I'm elected, I'm there for you to serve me. It doesn't work like that.
They do not have the heart of service.
Yes.
It's servant heart,
And so, you are a servant. You have to feel people's pain points. You have to be empathetic as a leader, find out what people need and solve their problems. Because it's about them. It's not about you. And so that's where we need to be heading. And the conversation is going to be had in the Haitian Times. We are undertaking a listening tour of about 10 major Haitian hubs in the United States and find out what are the needs in Houston and Maryland, Philadelphia, Miami, New York, Boston, and other places. What's there in these places? So wherever you are, you can connect. You know what's happening. Not just the battle is happening there.
Yes.
But what's there? What are the organizations there? What are they doing? What are the issues? What's happening? So that's the next frontier for the Haitian Times. We're going to want to bridge that gap.
Yes.
Because we're moving away. So now we need to find a connector, and the Haitian Times wants to be that connector because we are getting to the sophisticated stage of migration in the United States. This is where it gets very complicated. This is where we need to make alliances. We have to make alliances. For instance, in New York, you hear of Haitian Americans being elected in the city council. Well, that was an alliance made with the Jewish community in central Brooklyn. Used to dominate the politics there because by their sheer numbers. Well, the Jews population has been dwindling in New York. And so the leadership there has decided, okay, maybe we can work with the Haitians. And so they helped elect Haitians. And so now that was a partnership. And I think Miami is going to have that partnership because it never did, because there was enough Haitians that they could, not anymore.
Not anymore, because of the influx of other people coming in,
Exactly. So we in New York, we had to deal with that. But that was America reality. And what Miami was kind of unique because there's no more area that one group is going to overwhelmingly dominate. It's going to have to be alliances. And so we have to understand that and move forward accordingly.
Yeah, and again, thank you. I think that's a good way to close this interview, but it wouldn't be a window to Haiti without talking about Haitian proverb, you know. I don't know if you've heard of any, but I know one thing that's been with the canal issue, you know, and I know Haitian Times have covered that. It's a proverb that comes to mind is that "Dans pour y force, suban and me." Well, you heard that, you laughing.
Well, I mean, you know what it is. It's a dumple means you have rotten teeth.
Yeah, the rotten teeth. Yeah.
You can't eat anything else. You can't eat grill because it just, you know, it might be break the few that you have left. And the banane is really soft. So you can really bite into it. So that's that. I think it's a metaphor for the way the Dominican Republic has been treating Haiti. So they think that Haiti is weak, that they can just chop us. But I think the Dominican Republic overplayed its hands. You know, in every relationship, you know, even the person who's dominant, the weak person has some leverage of some sort. Because I was really taken aback that Abi Nader, being an economist, not understanding that neighbors are usually each other's biggest trading partners. And he overplayed that hand, and now he's got a lot of merchants and upset at him. Yeah. And so he's seen the reality of that policy. It's not working out very well for him.
True. I think the English, you know, you've said it rightfully. So it says like even the weak has its strength. The French call it "on a toujours besoin un plus petit que soi." You know, so even in its weakest ways, Haiti being the neighbor of the DR, like is the second major trading partner. So there's a way you treat your trade partners. Yeah. Even when you think they are lesser than
you are. Yeah, exactly. And so, well, that's another whole issue with the Dominican identity. I mean, you know, everybody in New York joke because there's a lot of Dominicans in New York. Dominicans don't think they're black, but you know, they're as black as we are, and then they have something with that. But I won't touch that.
Okay, yes, because we're gonna go in deeper because we have to go. So another time we will do that. But first, again, Gary, Pierre, thank you for the time you've given us. But most importantly, thank you for thinking this job is not just a labor of love, but something that must be done. Must be done professionally, but also something to realize that the next generation must continue that work. So I value your time. I value the work you all throughout the journey you've done. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
My pleasure. It's an honor for me. I love giving these interviews because it's a way for me to connect with viewers and readers everywhere because we all have a role to play. Mm-hmm. You and I, we're privileged to have access to media, mm-hmm. but when you have a privilege, you also have responsibility. And we have to inform and educate our audience. And this is why we do what we do. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you. All right.